What's up guys, Matty here. In today's video, we're going to be checking out the new Softube Console 1 MK3, as well as their new Core Mixing Suite plugins. Now, the Console 1 system's been around for a while. It started with the Console 1 MK1, then the MK2. Both of those basically look the same with just slight differences. Then this new MK3 version is almost like a new device. It looks completely different and has a lot more features than the original two did. So in today's video, we'll check out the new Console 1 and all the new features, as well as what the Core Mixing Suite bundle brings to it as well. Let's go. All right, guys, so here is the Console 1 MK3. I think the best thing to do is first just talk about how this all works if you were new to the Console 1 system, and then we'll go over all the features that it has. Now, the Console 1 is a piece of hardware, as you can see, that works with software inside your computer. And the idea is you put it on every single track of your song, and then it works as a mixing console. And you can switch from the different tracks and EQ or compress or whatever you need to do on whatever track you're working on. It makes it a very seamless system, and the idea is for it to work like you're working on a console. Now, as you can see here in Studio One, the console software is on the screen. Now, this isn't actually the plugin in the DAW. It's an external software running, and you can open and close it with this button right here, and it shows you your Console 1 software. But what's interesting, in the new software version, when you put the plugin on the channel, you can open it, and it gives you the ability to change all the different settings right from the plugin, which is pretty cool. Before, it was just like a picture of the Console 1, and it wasn't very easy to use unless you had the actual device with you. But now, the way they have it set up is you can go anywhere, and if you don't have your Console 1 with you, you can actually go in and change all the different settings, and you can switch from, the two different EQs, the panner, whatever you want to use, and you can even move these around so you can switch the order within the actual plugin. It has been a little confusing with both these ways to work now. A couple times I've had the software open and I tried to change it with a mouse, which doesn't work. You can only really change it in the plugin in the DAW. So there is a little bit of a learning curve if you've been using Console 1 for a while, just to get your head wrapped around the new ways you can do things. But it is welcome feature to be able to be on the road and not have the device with you and be able to still make changes to a mix or whatnot. Okay, so now that we have a little bit more of an understanding of the software, let's run through the actual device. Okay, starting on the left is the shift button. That's a pretty important knob because there are a lot of secondary options in the device that you will need that for. Above that is this new tape preamp button. And so that's new to the Console 1 software, where you can actually put the Softube tape emulator right on your channel before it hits the rest of your chain. And you can control how much you want to drive it with a button right above called the input gain by turning this one up and then turning down. You might not be able to quite see it on the screen, but turning down the volume over here. And that way you can drive your tape harder and get the sound you desire by, softening the transients and whatnot. It is interesting that it's called tape/preamp. Makes me think there's more to come with that, other than just one single tape plugin. So I'm sure that's a feature they're going to be pushing as time goes on. Above that is a phase inverse. Great feature to have. Next is your filters. So you can turn your filters on and off, right? And then you have a high cut and then a low cut. And you'll see on the screen on the right, the way I have my screen set up is the different knobs that are being touched will show up there. And then on my left-hand screen, I have the actual name of the track that I'm on. That works best for me. You can change these screens to be whatever you want. There's a VU meter, the shape, the actual shape for this here, which is the shape module we'll get into, EQ, compression, and then a few other options. But I do like to keep mine on the track here, and then the EQ or compressor, whatever I'm touching on this one. It just seems to work better. I've found that I can use just the device more than actually having to turn on the screen, which is pretty cool, not to have to use the screen all the time. You can actually really just sit and mix this now with just the device and no screen for a bit. So moving back to the filters, after that little rant, you have a high cut and a low cut, and that can be changed. You can use them from, all the different software that's available, either Softube or UAD, and switch the filters. If you want the SSL filters or the Neve filters or the API filters. I do like the Core Mixing Suite filters. They are Butterworth filters and they sound pretty good. And then if you do hit shift, you can change the actual slope of each filter. So you can change the slope of your low cut or change hard to do with one hand, change the slope of your high cut. All right, so let's move on to the shape section. Now, if you're using the SSL 4000, this would be your gate, and then your punch and sustain, which has been normal with the usual Console 1 software. If you're using the core mixing suite, it comes with quite a few more features. There's the core shape, which is just like, on the SSL one, you have your gate and then your punch and sustain, which is a great feature. But then you can switch it to this new thing called core panner. And I actually really like this. It has pan left and right, obviously, but it also has this front to back depth knob. And it sounds really cool when you're placing things in the mix, especially when you have everything going at the same time. You can move it left to right and then bring it forward or back. You also can switch it to mono. If you have like a stereo source and you want it to be mono, and then you can pan it and move the depth, you can do that. And you can also swap left and right. Let me play you something really quick so you can actually hear this panner in action and listen to the way the depth actually really pushes things back in the mix. So a pretty cool way to be able to change things in the mix. And I tell you, when you're mixing with this thing and you start moving that depth around, you can really get some cool dimensions that you might not have gotten before. Now, last shape module from the core mixing suite, man, that's a mouthful, is the core dual dynamic. It's almost like a multi-band compressor with 2 bands. And so you can either compress or expand with this. So you have low dynamic and then high dynamic, and you can change the crossover frequency here, as well as the speed of how fast the attack and release works. This is both of them combined. So this is really cool to have. It works great for drums or vocals if you want to bring down a little bit of the bright, or maybe expand the brightness of it and bring down some of the low end so that it tames some of the proximity effect. You can use this a lot of different ways, and it's been fun to experiment with it so far. Moving on to the EQ section, it has a bunch of features that are much welcomed if you've been using the Console 1 MK1 or 2 before. Most notably are cues on the low and high frequencies. Before, it was modeled after a kind of a SSL 4000, which doesn't have cues. Now they do. Also, there's 2 EQs built into this now. So you can have one here, and then you press this button and it switches to a different EQ. Now, right now I have the Core Vintage and the Core Modern, which are part of the Core Mixing Suite, but you can easily just switch to any other of your EQs by just hitting load and then press the EQ side you want it to load it on, and then you can go to Tube Tech or any UAD plugins. So if you want to use the Pool Tech, just hit OK, and now your Pool Tech's loaded on that side, but you still have Core Vintage on the other side or whatever you want. Now, when it comes to the actual Core plugins, they have Core Modern and Core Vintage like we talked about. Now, the Modern is much like a Pro Q or something, a very digital EQ. You can get really tight cues on here and go all the way up and down the frequency band on all of them, which I like. So if you want to do, some very detailed work, you can do that, or do cuts, whatever you want. Now, if you switch to the Core Vintage equalizer, it is a passive and parallel equalizer, much like a Manley EQ or a Pool Tech. And it has some really cool shapes to it, and they all somewhat interact with each other, as you can see. And even the low end, you'll see it cuts the upper mids there, or lower upper mids, by changing it. And that's much like kind of like what a Pool Tech does. So there's a lot of different sounds you can get with this Core Vintage. That's more of like a warmth character EQ, as opposed to the Core Modern, which is more of your detailed digital EQ. And then what's cool is this looks like it's a 4-band EQ, but if you hit shift, you'll notice that you have 2 more bands here, the low mid and the low mid 2. So that's actually a 6-band equalizer, which is welcome. There's a lot of times when I was using the Console 1 that I'd be using a more colorful EQ, and I'm like, oh, I want to notch out that frequency in like 500, and I'd have to pull up another plugin. Now with 2 EQs, you can do both and have the best of both worlds. All right, so the last module is our compressor module. And like the EQ module, this now has 2 compressors. This one I have Core FET and Core Bus. Now with the Core Mixing Suite, you get the FET compressor, the Bus compressor, and an opto compressor along with it. But like anything, you can load your own compressors here just by hitting there. And all the compressors you have, whether they're UAD or Softube, will load up easily. So just like before, this is pretty much straightforward. You got compression, release, attack, and then, of course, your ratio. And then depending on what comes along with that compressor, you can hit shift and switch to your wet and dry, the punch on and off, and the high frequency makeup on and off. Okay, so the last module is the drive section. And this is where you can drive harmonic distortion into your mix, make it sound more glued or exciting or whatever it is. The drive adds how much distortion there is, and then the character is either brighter or darker distortion. The one that comes with Core Mixing Suite is supposed to be like a best of all the different characters they've developed over the years, be it the SSL or the British model. I'm still a fan of the British model, but this one does sound pretty sweet. Below that is your main volume switch. Now, if you're using this in basically any DAW other than Pro Tools, this works really well within the DAW. You have the volume will actually change the faders you can see on the DAW. Then the pan knob actually changes the pan on the DAW. And the solo and mute, which you might see it's a little bit out of the camera, the solo and mute will solo and mute the DAW as well. So this thing works really seamlessly with most DAWs, except Pro Tools, just like everything else as we know. With Pro Tools, you can put it on every channel and you can use the switcher up here to pick the different channels, but it doesn't seamlessly work within the DAW as far as faders, solos, and mutes go. In this last row is the send section. Now, in the original unit, they had 3 sends. Now, you can hit shift and have up to 6 sends. I only have 1 send on this channel, so you only see 1, but if you hit send 1 and turn the volume knob, you will see that send 1 turns up and down. Hopefully, at some point, they will actually have what the name of the send is. I would think they should be able to do it, just like they can on all the tracks, because sometimes it's a little confusing. If you have 6 sends, you can't quite remember that send 1 is a plate and send 2 is a room. So maybe that will get fixed where the actual send is labeled there as well. But it is cool to be able to just grab your sends and change them right away, just like that. So one of the questions I had when the unit first came out was, okay, cool, now you have 2 EQs and 2 compressors, but can you switch them around? Like if I want an EQ compressor and then another EQ and a compressor, or if I want 2 compressors and 2 EQs, can I make it all happen? Yes, you can, and it's really easy. All you got to do is hit change order here. You just hold it down, and you go to whichever one you want to move. So let's say we want to move this bus compressor up above the sweet panner. Once you get to the unit you want to move, you just go to it and then release the change order, and then you can move it up. You see it's moving up, and then you hit OK, and now the bus compressor is going before the panner. So really easy to move the order around of the different modules. Another new feature that's very welcomed and helpful is the row of top numbers, which correspond to the track. Now they actually have colors of what you've color coded in your DAW. So as you can see, my yellow are my drums. It might be hard to see on the camera, but you should be able to see it. Blue is my bass, and then all these red ones are the guitars, right? So I know really quick, okay, I want to get to the guitars here. I can press that and go right to the guitars. The other awesome thing about this is there's 3 little LEDs above, and I'll hit play on this track, and you'll see these LEDs light up. So that tells you that signal's coming from that track. So I can press this one here, and it pulls up the guitar that's playing there, and I know that there's a signal that's coming through. So some really cool new ways of displaying everything in your mix that is helpful to keep your eyes off the screen a bit more. The last feature I want to show you guys is the presets and favorites. Now, if you hit presets, you'll notice that it's a bit different than before. They actually have it separated into the different plugin types they have. The American Class A, British Class A, so on and so forth. And they have presets for each one, which is pretty cool. And then if you want to load a section, you can hit load compressor. And you'll notice up at the top, my FET compressor MK2 is starred. So now they have a favorite button. And so let's say we want to favorite the opto compressor as well. You just go to it and then hit this button up here called favorites, and you'll see it puts a star there. So now when you go to, your different modules, and if there's an EQ or a compressor you always use, it's right at the top and it loads right up on your console one. And that works well for presets too. So if you have a couple different starting points that you use, you can save them as a preset of the whole channel and then star them as your favorites, so they'll be at the top of your preset list also. Okay, so the last question you might be asking, if you already have a console 1, MK1 or 2, do you need to upgrade to 3? Does it even work with the old one anymore? Well, the good answer is yes, it still works fine with the old one. And if you load the new software up with the original console 1, it will basically work just like it did before. You'll have 1 EQ, 1 compressor, and then the shape section. Now, you still can change your EQs just like you did before. However, the only unfortunate part, and maybe they will change this as the software develops, it just came out, so things could change. If you want to use the second EQ or the second compressor, you're going to have to go into your actual software here to use that. So you still can only use one EQ on the actual hardware unit, but to use the second EQ, you'll have to use it just like a plugin and change it here, which kind of loses a lot of the idea of using the Console 1. I'm hoping that they'll be able to press a button for you guys still using the Console 1 MK1 or MK2 so that you can switch the other EQ and make it a little bit easier. But that's the only difference. Now, I know that might sound unfair to some, but if you think about it, you still get all the updates with the original MK1, and it works just like the way the software worked when you bought it. Now, whether you think it's worth it to upgrade to the new unit is really up to you. I think it's a worthy update. I think the screens, even though some people might not like them, the screens make it so you don't actually have to open your software as much anymore. On my old MK1, I had an iPad right in front of me, so the software would come up on there. I've actually gotten rid of the iPad. I don't need it anymore. And the few times I might need to look at the full software, I can just hit it up on the regular screen. But I've been able to work pretty well just using those two little screens on the actual unit. Also, if you do want to use the second EQ and the second compressor, it is pretty awesome to have it, just to be able to switch the button on to the other EQ or other compressor. That's a killer feature. The visual representation of the LEDs up at the top is another thing that really adds to the package of this new unit being a worthy update. All right, guys, so that is the Console 1 MK3. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. You think it's a worthy upgrade or not? I personally think it's a really great upgrade. The hardware unit is basically everything you could possibly want in a hardware unit. It really does make you feel like you're working on a console. I did ask if they will be introducing any other plugins, maybe other manufacturers getting on board so you can use other things. They said to stay tuned, there'll be more to come, so who knows what that means. But I am hopeful that there'll be ways in the future to control other software as well. Another thing that would be great is if Pro Tools would get on board so we could use Pro Tools in this just like it is in the other DAWs. I'm hoping with the new ownership at Pro Tools that they might start welcoming, the ability to use SSL stuff or Softube stuff within their DAW, so it's a little more inclusive just like all the other DAWs. Who knows? We'll see. Pro Tools always kind of does their own thing. Anyway, that's all I got for today. If you need your songs mixed and mastered, hit me up at mixandmastermysong.com. You can also find my presets there as well. See you soon.